I'd like to say welcome to Dr. Jodi Moon, who is one of our expert speakers for the School Response to Drugs and Drug-Related Incidents Knowledge Lab. Dr. Moon, welcome. Why don't you start out and tell us a little bit about yourself and your current work?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Probably one of the most relevant things about myself is that I am a former middle school math teacher. So I was in the classroom for 10 years. This was, about 10 years ago, but it really has informed all the work that I have chosen to be involved with since. As I finished my tenure there, I obtained my PhD in education policy. And really, all of my work has been motivated towards how we can help all students succeed. That's really what ties any of the work that I've done together. I am no longer with the Earl Carl Institute, so I would rather speak to my position there than the work I am engaged in right now. The time I spent at the Earl Carl Institute, I was what you would call in the research world, I was the PI, but I was the lead on the project that we did with LAPA, and that was looking at the school response to kids, to students, right? But really, let's keep it at kids who are involved in incidences that include drugs. And it was really a project that to me just felt very important and relevant, because as a society, we know more and more all the time about what a proper or appropriate or helpful response is to people who have substance use issues. And yet we still have many schools, many states, and many kids who are being criminalized when really what they need is help. It was a really great project to be a part of.
Thank you, Dr. Moon. You talked about this a little bit. You talked about being a teacher for many years. I'm sure you had firsthand knowledge and perspective of what was happening with the kids that you were working with, and a little bit why you've done this work. But can you talk a little bit more about it? Think about when we talk about exposure to drugs in schools for these children, just share your perspective on why we need to pay attention to this issue. You talked a little bit about schools making some progress, but what's the importance of paying attention to this issue, especially now?
I think that there are several ways to think about that. From a teacher's perspective, it's as simple as kids can't learn if they're not in school. And it is true that some students aren't learning when they're in school too, because of external situations, extenuating circumstances. But just first and foremost, from the classroom perspective, it felt and continues to feel very important that we're thinking of all the mechanisms we can put into place that allow more students to be a part of the learning environment that schools work so hard to create. In response to part of your question, which was about why is this important now? I think when I did the work for LAPA, we might have been looking at 2019 or 2020 data, but even the most recent, so it's the YRBS, which is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is really solid data that comes out every year. We know that drug use in schools is still an issue. It is still a problem. Some of those behaviors are declining just a little bit, but not enough. And that is really clear from the data. And at the same time, our post-pandemic world has made it clear, more clear than ever, the ties between other mental health issues and substance use issues, and the need for us to support our kids, right? If we want them to grow into productive, healthy adults, we need to be looking at the opportunities that we have. And SAMHSA and others are very clear that the school setting is one great opportunity for us to make a difference with our kids.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Dr. Moon. I appreciate that. And you did touch on your work related to LAPA's Model Act. Can you share with us why you think this model was needed and what you hope it accomplishes?
I think it's needed largely because the research that we did, I worked with some of Professor Morris's law students and some of the law students at TSU, and we looked very carefully at what's going on across the states. And as we know, education is under the purview of each state. And so this conversation is not to debate the logic of that or not, but we found so clearly that the majority of the states really don't allow states that want to handle it differently. They preclude that by saying, no, any drug incident must be reported to the police. For me, if there was a single kind of outcome from this that would be meaningful, it would be to remove that language. And I understand there are stronger, farther goals that we would like to see. But if you think about, we have states, and states have a certain kind of set of rules, and then we have districts and they have their rules, and then we have schools, and of course there's variation across in terms of how people are responding to students in any number of discipline issues, not just drugs. But if we can continue to open doors to allow the innovators to reach out to their community, to bring in the resources that they need to better support students, then we should definitely be doing that. And yes, I would like to see more happening as well, but boy, if there were one win from this, that would be it.
That's great, Dr. Moon. I appreciate that perspective, and we look forward to digging more in on this during our Knowledge Lab on October 11th. So thank you for taking the time to chat with me today, and we will continue the discussion on October 11th.